Hello everyone, welcome to Tabito Stories. This is our 18th episode and this is our season 3 of Tabito Stories. And today we are bringing our guest. He is a professor at Simpson University and he is Dr. Middlebrook. He's going to be our show in the guest in Tabito Stories today and he will be sharing his story. And today we also have our guest, Conrad Lopez.
Hello, everyone. My name is Conrad Lopez. I'm co-hosting today with Gustavo, so it'll be fun.
Thank you. Welcome. Thank you very much, Gustavo Conrado, for just taking the time. It's great to be here with you.
It's nice to have you here on the podcast today and to be part of Tabito Stories. Can you tell us about your story, about where you come from?
Absolutely. Just my life story, right?
Yeah.
That's a short story. Yeah. Well, I really feel honored to have just heard your story, Gustavo. That's a fascinating story. Hope you've told it and keep telling it. I feel like life stories are one of those things that we have to keep telling. It's like one of the most powerful things is to kind of bring people into that story, and even just constructing it helps us see just the way God's making a beautiful story in our lives. So that's kind of my life. I came from East Texas. That's where I was born, actually in Dallas, the Dallas area. But all of my family was in Houston and Nacogdoches, which is east side, kind of close to Louisiana. So think like pine trees, rolling hills, a lot of cattle, and it's hot, it's humid, and it's just full of life. The earliest European settlers thought that when people came there, it made them lazy because it was just so full of life. And so I really enjoyed my upbringing there. I moved to Nacogdoches when I was young after my folks split up, me and my three brothers. I'm the middle one. And we lived in town at my dad's place, and we switched 1 week over to my mom's place and 1 week over to my dad's, even time. And they stayed and they communicated about a lot of things. So some divorces are really hard on families. This one was about as easy as it gets. I still think it's not ideal, but that being said, like, me and my brothers lived a fairly stable home life. They both, my parents got remarried happily, and so I was raised in a Christian home, and by the time I and my brothers were teenagers, we had two new sisters from my dad's second marriage, so I'm actually one of five. And all of those are married, and they have kids, and most of them are still in Nacogdoches and the Texas area. So I only have one family member out here in Redding that's a sister in San Jose. As I was growing up, my story is largely one of just making it through. I never really thought I was a very intelligent kid, and I didn't get super great grades, but I really love to read comic books. And when I read Genesis, I said, this is like a comic book. Right? We got superheroes and gods and like crazy stuff happening all over the place, and floods and angels, and I just thought, well, this is neat stuff. And the good guy is winning, right? God was making a way for his people. And I thought, man, I just want to keep studying this. So thankfully my parents were well educated, and they knew which things to put in front of me, when to let me read C.S. Lewis, when to recommend this scholar. Tozer, he was one of mine, right? I teach actually at Tozer Seminary as well within Simpson. And Tozer was an early figure for me trying to understand this thing that I loved. So grew up with a tight knit of people that I still see on a regular basis back home in Nacogdoches, but I ended up going to Wheaton College for my undergrad, a Christian liberal arts school where Billy Graham went.
Billy Graham.
Yeah, so he's an alum there. Actually, my great uncle and aunt went to school with them. They ate with them breakfast, right, on a regular basis. So that was my heritage. So I went there, and then After college, I came back home because my family had an emergency, and I had to be with them. So I moved back there. I started building timber frames. So I worked with my hands. I was a woodworker, and like post and beam with like wooden pegs, like that whole thing.
Yeah.
And I did that for a number of years. And during that time, I got married, had a kid. I hurt my back, and I realized like I can't do this for the rest of my life. So I was teaching on the side, Sunday school, and I realized I need to start teaching and do woodworking on the side. So that's when I decided to go to Chicago, and I was there for a decade. Me and my wife had another kid, so now we have 2 girls. And that decade, I got my MA and my PhD, and I was pastoring and leading small groups in the Chicago area. And it was at a CMA church, my first experience with one. And so as I was teaching, I got the call that there's a CMA school in Reading that needs an Old Testament professor. And it's a real big blessing because there's not many of those jobs out there. And I said, wow, it's CMA. I get to teach undergrad and seminary. And I just fell in love when I got here. And so it's been a great journey. So those are the events.
Mm-hmm.
You can ask about little things, but man, it's been just a life of blessing. I've had more than my fair share.
What were some of the difficulties that you faced as you were pursuing your PhD and as you got out of, as you were pursuing this career? Like, what were some of the difficulties that you see that kind of laid ahead of the road? That
some of the difficulties were the field that I was going into, like Old Testament biblical studies, was shrinking. Less and less people want to pay for that kind of education, right? They are interested in a lot of other things, and so the people that are hiring are fewer and fewer, and the people that are currently teaching are like wanting to stay on longer and longer because there's nowhere quite else for them to go. So it was really hard for me to find a job, to say this was going to be a financially okay thing. Yeah, because it's a shrinking field, and so I didn't know if I would get the job. Actually, the day I got this job, I was in an interview for a marketing job, something completely different. So I got to the end of almost a decade of preparation, and I was about to see it just go away. And so what was God doing with that dream He put in my heart? I didn't know. And then He found me here. So a couple of the other challenges and difficulties were, an academic is kind of like being a monk. Like you go to the library, you open your book, you read, you're all alone. You type your papers, your thoughts, you're all alone, right? You go to class and you just have someone like speak at you, but then you go off and you do more work and research. And so you don't make a lot of money, just like a monk. You're a little isolated. You don't get a lot of notoriety or fame, but so it takes a certain skill set, and that was a challenge for me. And being as a student was also another challenge, because being a teacher is a lot about kind of like being a pastor, right? If you don't have a little bit of that like sense of like, oh, I love people and students and I really want to be involved in their lives, then you kind of don't have any business being a great like professor, at least at a small university, because like you gotta like love your students. And I really do. Like I enjoy that part, and I see some of my colleagues, not here but elsewhere, where they're just kind of brains on sticks. And they just, all they want to do is research. But I love my students. I'm here for their personal lives as well. So that can be a challenge as a student preparing for this job. You don't get all that interaction with students, so you have to have really strong, like, that's why I love house churches and little house groups and as a part of a larger church, because then you have like that built-in community. And and just daily interaction with others who kind of keep you grounded. So financial, there's social problems, and then kind of like there's like personal problems too. Like if you are married or you have someone like that's with you on the journey, that like they have to buy in. If they don't buy in, then they don't want to be a monk, right? But if they don't believe in it, then they're not going to come along with you. And so it takes their help. A lot of times people financially help who are married to someone in the academy, right? They become kind of the breadwinners, and as elegant and and respectful as it seems like it is to be Dr. Middlebrook, right? Like, don't make a lot of money, right? And doesn't really give me any fringe benefits outside of just oh, you've done something impressive that I would never want to do. But so it takes a lot of support socially, interpersonally, and financially.
I think it's amazing to see that I was in your class this year, and I was able to feel that passion that you have for teaching, for like teaching students what you are doing, to kind of like guide them and to show them, about God, and to teach them about everything about it. And one of the questions that I have is that there are students at Simpson University pursuing the same career as you. What advices would you give to them that are going after the same path as you?
Don't. No, just kidding. In some ways it's serious, right? Like I think with the ever shrinking job market, like you need to be like realistic about whether or not you might get a job. The best scholars in the world have trouble getting jobs right now sometimes. So it's a little bit of a risk to come into a field that's shrinking and has a whole lot of people. More and more people are getting doctorates. So the number of applicants is also raising, right? So we have this kind of conundrum. So in one sense, I would say don't for most of them, right? But on the other hand, I'd say we need more. It's never been more needed for us to understand the Old Testament and the Bible, because it's been misunderstood for so long. And there's more material that we can use these days to help us interpret than there's ever been before. Like, we need people who can be the bridge between the tons of data, right? The archaeology, the history, the languages. We know more than we've ever known before. This century is amazing, but it has to be synthesized. You have to build a bridge to the average person so that they can understand it, and to have better tools and teaching curriculum. And I'm on that journey. I'm building the bridge. I'm not all the way across. I'm helping some students get there, but I'm not fully there. So I would probably tell them, take a realistic look at your finances. I would probably tell them, talk to a lot of professors, right? What is the lifestyle like? Can you handle the lifestyle, right? And third, I would probably say, start now. Like, if you love the Bible enough to go and study it, you probably already know more Bible than 80% of the people you know. So just start now. Start teaching. Ask, hey, can I teach a Sunday school class? Can I start a Bible study? Can I just present once before the kids on my floor, or the kids at my church, or just like the buds on your team, like anybody, like see what it does for you. What in that excites you? And maybe you'll find that, hey, being a regular Sunday school teacher, or a Bible study leader, or heck, a preacher, something like that, that actually might be just as fulfilling. And you can be a plumber and make good dollars and have plenty of time afterwards to do all of those things. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a career. But I would say, if you do have that passion, if you do have that calling, if you feel it, go for it. Because I think that's the voice I listen to. I said, I see the world needs better reading skills of the Old Testament. I want them to hear God's voice. And I want it to be easier for them to hear God's voice, and help others to train people to do that too. And man, I was excited for that. And I think that's what got me through. That's what sustains me today. I think it's just as worthwhile a calling as anything else in life. I am comfortable not having a BMW in my garage or a carport, right? And that's fine with me because that's not the meaning of life for me. It's to love God and love my neighbor and help others find their way along that journey as well.
Yeah, I think it's like it's a career that has a lot of obstacles in it, has a lot of difficulties, and it's not for sure like you're saying. There's more people having a PhD, having a master, a bachelor in whatever they're doing. Like now, you have more people coming in, and one of the things that you mentioned to me before we began the podcast is you are actually planning in beginning a show where you can continue teaching. And one of the things that I see through that, as you mentioned, is that technology and the media is kind of like that tool that kind of like opens and is part of that bridge. It kind of like opens the bridge a little bit more for more people to see what's happening. What are your plans in regards to that? Like, how do you see that evolving as you begin working it?
So making the bridge. All right. Well, even though there are a lot of people with PhDs out there in biblical studies, that they kind of build from where they are backwards. But there are a lot of people in the church who don't quite get there, right? We need to finish that bridge. So for me, I'm actually I'm trying to put myself in the pew, in the every man's shoes and every woman's shoes, right? Looking over there, saying, if I wanted to get over there, how could I help them? So one of the projects I've applied for a grant for is to say, you know what was the one of the most popular Bibles on the market in the last 10 years? And in the last 7-8 years was in the top 5 most sold books in Christian books to kids. It's the comic book Bible, the action Bible. Over 1 million copies are out there, right? Whether or not they're reading, but there's a comic book Bible. And these people are receiving this Bible, and it's not just words on a page, but it's pictures. So we've been teaching people how to read the Bible with the words, the very words, for a long time. But now we have to teach them also to how to interpret the images, right? If they're going to get the right message. And the videos that are coming out, like these Bible Project videos. So I feel like there's a whole new set of reading skills, right? Where it's like, as soon as you have a comic book, you have to choose what skin tone does Moses have, right? Is he going to be Caucasian? Or is he going to be Middle Eastern? Is he going to be black, right? Is Moses born in Africa? Like, there's a lot of questions, right? And, the historical look of Moses as a Middle Eastern person, probably relatively short, definitely not giant biceps. That's ignored in the action Bible, right? He doesn't look exactly like, maybe the best historical witness, because it's that superhero genre, right? So we have all of these interpretive decisions, and the average person in the pew doesn't know, like, is this Bible shaping me the way the word is supposed to, right? Are there body images, racial stereotypes, right? Or how are we pulling this in? And there's a lot of opportunity there. I love the art and the word together. It's great. And so I don't want it to go away. I just want it to help people to read it as best they can and to get all the right messages. So that's one project I'm working on how do images translate? How can we interpret them well? What's the impact in our culture of the image combined with the Word of God? And that gets me excited, because I feel like any kid can appreciate the value of like a comic book Bible. So let's give them tools to like interpret it all better. So that's one thing. I think at Tozer we're doing long distance. Like our seminarians who are training to be pastors and other ministers in various settings, in business people who are bringing their Christian witness there. All these people that are coming to Tozer Seminary for their MDivs, for their MA in leadership, right, for their MA in ministry leadership, etc., and their certificate programs. These people are all over the world. Most of our students aren't here in Reading. They're like, I've got a student in New Jersey. I've got a student in St. Louis. I've got a student in Washington, right? I got a student here in Reading, one who's out in a suburb of Reading. But we're all zooming in together through TVs like this one and through mediums like you're sharing here. And we're learning and collaborating together. And then sometimes we come together for a week-long intensive, get to know one another more, share meals, and gain some relational trust. And so we're doing that here and abroad. And then there's a thriving Hispanic church planting community in the Valley. And Tozer is reaching out, and we've got extension sites. And we're training those pastors too in Spanish. And I'm excited to be about that. But technology is helping us make that bridge to communities that, they typically don't always have. Like the pastors, they don't have an MDiv, but Tozer's like reaching out and saying, we can get you trained and you can rightly handle the Word of God that much better and see it, blossom. So the future is very exciting here, but even just in the church in general, I think it's a nice time to be alive.
Yeah, I agree with what you said in terms of capitalizing on the opportunities for the younger generation, and creating material that relates to the younger generation. But I had a question in terms of building the bridge and having a partner beyond your team and with marriage. What is a key factor that like allowed your partner to buy in and like help you be your like support system, because it takes a toll on someone to commit to that level, to move with them and to commit your life with someone.
Yeah, that's a great question, Conrado. Actually, I kind of didn't expect you to like drill in there, but that's a really important thing. My wife, Katie, and I don't want to misspeak for her at all, but I would say she had dreams and hopes about this season in life. And one of the things that we've learned is how important it is to check in with those dreams, right? Because I had a passion, and she saw it. She saw that I was gifted in teaching. She saw that I had a passion for the subject, and she knew that God had called me to that. So she was ready to affirm that, right? And if you're so lucky to have someone along with you that believes in you and sees what God's doing in your life, that's fantastic. That's already a miracle. But then on top of that, I think one of the things we realized is that God had things going on in her life, right? She had plans and ambitions. And how do we cultivate that? So along the way, asking her, and like, we were not perfect along this, but like, how do we cultivate your dreams? And so one of the dreams that she had was to be at home for a little while, raising the kids, right? I'm a student, and she stays at home. Where's the money? Right? And so for us, thankfully, like just before we came here, we had a little family money that came in, and we were able to make the transition. And we said we could put this towards a retirement, right? Or something like that. And then, but we both said, hey, I have a dream to be this scholar, and she has this dream to be at home with the kids, and then afterwards re-enter the workforce. And that's happening. But that season was really sweet for us. And so we just kept having those honest conversations. What are your dreams right now? What's your 5-year goal? Can we do this? And being ready to say, you know what? We know this is what we're going to do, but right now we got to take 5-7 years and go and work. And that's where we're at the end of this season. We didn't know where this job was going to be, and we said, that's okay. Like, the most important thing is that we raise our children well, because by that point, that's a priority, right? And we're not going to go into massive debt. And so we just said, we're going to go out there and we're going to work together and do it. So it really helps that we had a strong marriage going into that season, right? We had all the right patterns. We started out and we said, we're making money, but most marriages that have lots of problems, it centers around money. So the first thing we did was we said, we're going to give some money to the Lord, because he gives us everything, right? So it was like, if it's a gift, then it's easy to give back. But if it's not a gift and I earned it, it's mine, then I deserve it, and maybe they don't, right? Then it's like, ooh, it's mine, and all of a sudden it's not shared. So everything we have is shared, and because it's all a gift anyway. So we don't have like her bank account and my bank account. You know, that's one of the things that, like, we just said, we have to absolutely trust each other, and we do, and that's what we expect from one another. That's what we receive.
Yeah.
So, and you know, that takes, you know, we go on a month. It seems like not a lot, but we go on a date every month, right? And then since we've been at Simpson, we have coffee dates on Thursday mornings. I come in later to work, and that's fine. We grab some coffee, we walk around, you know, a lake or a little hiking trail, and we just enjoy the time talking with one another. Keep that fire alive.
Yeah, that's really good. I appreciate the fact how your foundation that you built your marriage on has been like love and trust and honesty and communication. Because I feel like oftentimes in our generation, a lot of people only double down on like one of, you know, those characteristics, but it's important to have all of them, you know, to build a strong foundation to a relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I just add one more thing to that? My experience sometimes with marriages is that it becomes everything to somebody.
Yeah.
And it's almost like you put your marriage on a pedestal, and it has to supply everything, all of your relational needs, etc. But that is something Kitty and I also have rejected. And we said, you know what? I need friends besides her, and we need community to come around us. We need, and we moved away from family when we did the academic thing, but we still needed aunts and uncles and cousins, and so we found a community that could speak into our lives, that were in our house enough to know, Thomas, that's not right. You need to do more dishes, you know, whatever it is. Like they knew how to keep me in line. They helped me, I helped them. They celebrated when we had children, I celebrated them. And so it really takes a community, not just to raise a child, but also to nurture a marriage. And so I found strength in having a tight group of people that I could also trust. Again, those house groups were just my savior so many times. They saved not just me, but also my family in so many ways. So
Yes, and in regards to relationship, one of the questions that I had last time was, do you think having God first balances everything else in life?
That's a good question. Does having God first balance everything in life? I would say he's the foundation. And so, yeah, he talked like building yourself a strong foundation, and it has to be bigger than you, right? It can't just be you, and it really just can't be just you and your partner, right? You have to both agree on something, because if you're always choosing for yourself, right, the thing to chase after, you're going to be going this way, you're going to drift away. But if you have a common goal, it doesn't matter how far apart you are. Like, some people are real similar to their spouse, some people are very different, but if they're running towards the same place, right, if they're pursuing, you know, loving God, loving their neighbor, they're gonna be always facing that same direction, you know. And so I kind of feel like that is that we have the opportunity to kind of move in the same direction, and when we're following God. And you know, besides the fact that, like, God loves marriages, he loves families, he invented it, right? And he looks after us as fathers. I don't think it's a surprise that God, the main metaphors for God and who he is father and son, right? Husband and bride, right? Even kind of head and body. Like he just loves us in the way that we are made to be to together, right? The first thing that was not good in creation, right? It's all good. It's good. It's good. Very good. Oh, it's not good for man to be alone. And so I think we were made to be together underneath God, and that supports it, right? And it's been nothing but good when we can be grateful for all of the gifts in our lives and pursue the same goals and passions, and we learn forgiveness, right? Right, especially through Jesus. Like, there are a lot of religions that don't have that emphasis on forgiveness and worldviews, and man, it's just critical because we all screw up.
Yeah.
Right? We're gonna need it every day, and the longer you're married, the more you're gonna realize you need it, right? Like, I only realize how poor I am at it more and more and more, but that means I'm more and more thankful and grateful for the forgiveness that I receive from Katie on a daily basis.
It's nice to see how everything has worked out, and yet, like you mentioned, God being the foundation of things working out, and you being able to accomplish your dream, to be living your dream, and to pursuing what your calling was, and then for her to pursuing what she wanted to do, her calling as well, and kind of like working together, and then the community that was built around it, that kind of help you move. And like you have mentioned, I do agree that having a community, having people, having friends around you that have a common goal mindset, that have sort of guidance to your life, can really help you go to places that you didn't think you were going, and it's all because of the support that they bring to you. So coming into Simpson, the Simpson University class this year, classes and everything. So in 2020, COVID-19 happened, and what are some difficulties that you have faced teaching here at Simpson University?
Yeah, I would say nothing has stayed the same. Everything that I do as a professor has been changed and modified in ways that I find usually unhelpful. I normally have that face-to-face interaction, so I see your whole face, not just like, hey, I've got this like thing. It's like, it's hard to see. It's hard to communicate, right? And the technology, like, you've got some students who are in class, some students who are Zooming. That was a huge challenge last semester, especially. This semester, I didn't do the kind of both and. We ended up going outside. But then the people who needed to be online were still Zooming in. So, secondly, what do my students need when they're in a pandemic? Well, they need community. They need counsel and encouragement. And I'm personally distant from them, right? So the very thing they need is the very thing that I'd like to provide, but could not so much. So having students in and, into my office, into my home even, bringing food in, that's one thing that I love doing as a professor. I like making hummus. I learned how to make hummus.
Hummus is good. I love hummus.
Yeah.
With pita chips?
Whew. I like it with veggies.
With veggies?
Yeah, broccoli, carrots, whatever. And I'll put it on everything. My wife hates that, but I'll put it on anything. But I make my own. I learned when I was in Israel, and I'll bring it in for the whole class, and we'll just eat. And I don't know if that's ever gonna be happen again.
A quick little question. Like, do you have like a certain recipe, or do you use chickpeas and like your own type of spices that you use, or or is that secret?
No. I'll usually I use canned, but sometimes I'll get fresh stuff, etc., or just dried chickpeas. So chickpeas, lemon. Let's see, tahini, which is tahini, not tahini. Tahini, which is like a sesame paste, sesame seed paste, and olive oil, and then cumin, salt, right? So that's kind of the base. Those are, I have to have that or it's going to be a weird hummus. But on top of that, you can throw in some honey, like date honey is really kind of good in there, and cracked pepper. Sometimes I'll pour in some hot sauce. So, just
Make it your own, huh?
yeah, make it my own. So I really like it. So
It'll be good.
yeah,
I'll learn how to make some hummus.
that's right. You have to have a really powerful blender
Yeah.
because they have like a shell on them that you can blend up, but it gets kind of pulpy. So if you can get it really hot and like blend it, like those, it'll get really smooth. But the smoothest hummus,
Food
you
processor?
actually take it off.
Oh, you take it off.
It just takes a while, right? So like you warm it up a little, and you can kind of pop them off, but it just takes so much time. Anyway,
I don't know what a hummus is. I never.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm kind of less.
it's a Mediterranean thing.
Okay.
It's-
Chickpeas.
Do you remember that stuff I got? It was like a little thing, and then it had the pretzels on top, and it was like a little cream that I got the other day from the grocery store.
Is it like I don't know what it is.
It's like a little dipping, and then, and like sometimes they spread it on like
Crackers.
on
and
crackers
stuff.
or like little sandwiches. It just
Yeah.
depends on.
So the chickpea is a little legume, a bean, and when you mash it up, and it's high in protein, and so a lot of Mediterranean cultures, they use it kind of like I grew up using peanut butter. I spread it on bread, I put it on fruit, whatever else, and like so, hummus is kind of like that. You just kind of everybody has it out, somewhere.
Yeah. And kind of going back to Israel,
Mhm.
like when you went to Israel, how was it like over there? Did you live over there or were you over there studying?
So I've been there 4 times, and 2 of those times I was excavating at a site, right, doing archaeology for about a month, and the rest of the time I was touring as either taking a tour or leading tours, and so I. Before I got there the first time, I'd studied so many maps, so much archaeology, learned so much about the original cultures and landscape that when I got there, I had that feeling when you go back home to like your hometown and you're like, you close your eyes and you're like, that's where the Quiznos is, and that's where I had my first kiss, and that's where I'd ride bikes, right? You just like, you're comforted by all the familiarity. That's what it was like for me. It was weird. I'd never been there before. I felt like I was coming home. And so it was just a lovely time each time I've gone. And, it's on the bigger picture, like the Jewish people have a home now, right, in Israel. And so any Jewish person in the world can immigrate there, and Israel will help them get there. It's called making aliyah, where you go up into there. And so a lot of times when you're traveling to Israel, people are going there and it's kind of like a religious experience. It's not just going to visit France or South Africa or something like that. I mean, it's a religious experience. So you have sometimes people singing songs. Even the Psalms, like the Psalms of Ascent, where you're going up in the temple, they'll sing those together, like on the plane or in like a bus, and you just kind of get that kind of festive spirit. Oh man, we're going to Israel. So that's really exciting. And next year we're going. Simpson undergrad students and grad students have a study course that we do through our partner Jerusalem University College. And so they have amazing on-site facilities right in Jerusalem, just right outside the old city walls. And so right outside this gate, so you can just step right into history with these guys and learn to read the land and kind of feel at home there. So it's a 3-week tour, and it's fantastic. So yeah, email me if you ever want to learn more about that, because I want students to come. It's great every other year.
Wow, that's really cool. How you went to Israel and how you felt like home. How you felt like this feels like home, and you were able to know which pretty much everything pretty much what each place each place had, and kind of like the history behind, and kind of like where it was located and the meaning of it. That's a really cool experience. And as you went to Israel and this happened, throughout your life, who have been three people that have been the most influential to you in your life?
Only three, huh? Um, I've been really blessed, as you can tell in my story, right? I've been given things that a lot of people don't have the opportunity to do, so I'm very grateful for that. But far and away, the people that I've been given are the most valuable to me, right? You can take away, all my, professor clothes or whatever else. Like, I want those people in my life. And let's see, number one, my wife, right? I've been married for 15 years. And it's just been fantastic. So she shaped me on the daily level. She doesn't let me get away with stuff. She's a great balance for me. Like, I'm kind of a go with the flow. She's a little bit more of a planner, right? Detail oriented. And as long as we listen to one another, usually things go well. I push her out into new things. She helps me stay grounded. Yeah, so that's a big one. And there's nothing like coming home and knowing that there's going to be somebody there. So that is a huge comfort for me. Secondly, it's my kids. I'll kind of make them one. Like, my two girls, right? They inspire me every day, not just with their intelligence and their creativity. I mean, they teach me things about the world. And sometimes, kids, they just have a perfect insight. Like, one time I remember Eden, my oldest, I said, we were reading some story and it mentioned heaven. And I was just like, I was thinking, like, I wonder, what are we even going to do in heaven, right? Are we just going to sing songs all day, right? Or is there holy work that we can do? Like, are we going to be all artists, right? Something like, and I just turned to Eden and I was just kind of absently saying, like, what are we going to do in heaven? She's like, well, we'll just do whatever God's doing. It's like, yeah, it's just like, yeah, it's a fantastic answer. And it's because children who are in a home that's where they feel the love, like, they know what the God's love is like, right? They just have like a good insight there. And so that's why children are great partners to walk through life in. But they also, they consume things, and you have to feed them. You have to keep feeding them and clothing them, and it keeps me really grounded in like the everyday needs of our bodies and our life. And that's part of the joy, right? It's like changing a diaper was, honestly, it was just kind of a pleasure. It's like in clothing them and tending to their like cuts and wounds. Like, I never want to get so old that I don't like learn to just pay attention to the human condition in any of my neighbors. But my children are training me in that, and they've really shaped me. The third, I'll also choose two for that one. That's my dissertation mentors, Lawson Younger and John Monson. And both of them have taught me over years and years, ancient languages, cultural contexts, how to be a godly scholar, and how to have a work-life balance, right? You have to maintain that, and it's they have just impacted me greatly. And men of great faith, right? They said, if I ever, all of this, right? These guys are like amazing scholars. They know so much, so many languages. They just master this material, and they would throw it all away if it meant that they weren't serving the Lord, right? They just had like an undedicated, unrestrained dedication to God, and even to their families. They show the priorities in the way that they live their lives, and I just so appreciate that. So, yeah, professors, children, my wife.
Yeah, that's really good. I like how you said your children allow you to see a different perspective of life. Because oftentimes like children are very honest because they don't have
Too
like
honest.
yeah, sometimes they're too honest, but it's a good thing because they speak exactly what's on their mind, and it's not made up. So, and it's something that you can appreciate. And one thing I've noticed throughout your life, and then like I kind of felt that like Gustavo and I couldn't kind of relate to this. You've done a phenomenal job of like surrounding yourself with individuals who want to be successful, and it kind of rubs off on you, and it kind of it allows you to become successful yourself, and that's kind of what Gustavo and I have kind of also have emulated and become
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. Absolutely, and I think the friendship I've seen, a lot of the athletes here have been a ground for everything that you're building on top of, right? It's like those relationships, the strength of those things, when you can be honest and vulnerable and trusting with one another, like you can build so many good things on top of that, and you can be super smart, you can have all the resources, you can have all the ambition, but if you don't have people in your life that you can trust and like really be vulnerable with, like it can all fall apart or it can all seem empty, right? Out there in the suburbs, the white picket fences, there's a lot of demons out there behind those beautiful white picket fences. It's not all cheery, right? But because they don't always have people they can love and trust. It means a lot.
Yes, and I do agree with Conrad's and your topic and how in building a community in the demons, and I think uh, in urban communities that are out that are too big, like say Los Angeles, that are just too big. I think sometimes the diversity can take you different path, different ways, and I think having a small community, sometimes the small places with the small communities are the ones that have the most connections and uh, are able to kind of like people, they're able to kind of like not make them feel like empty. So
Mm-hmm.
people they don't feel empty because they have the community, they have the people. And sometimes I think when someone lives in a place that's just too big for them, they can feel alone very often. And
Yeah, you can get lost in a crowd, right?
mhm.
And you can also get away with stuff in a crowd, right? You get on the internet and you're just anonymous, right? And it's just everyone in the world is on there. Or you get into like LA and it's like, who's gonna see me do this, that, or the other? But like here, if you're in a small community, like people see you. And some people are like, oh, I don't want to like people up in my business, but it's actually good for us, right? And it's you can still have diversity in those small things because every person is so different. If you're really in their lives, like it's it's actually really rewarding. And
Where do you think most of your personal growth has come from?
in those little communities, one of the advantages is that they see you at your good and your not so good, and they name those things. And in Christian communities, a lot of times, they are really interested in how God has made you, and they see you as a gift. And so they say, "Thank you for being an encourager," or they'll say, "Thank you for extending yourself in service. Thank you for your patience," or and they're gonna stick with you because some people they just bail, right? Because they're like it's okay to have like a tight knit community, but what if everybody just bails when it's time to go, like and then whenever they want, right? But a Christian community stays together, like they commit their lives not just to their family but also to their church family, right? So having people name things in my life has been where I grow. Like I've had people say, Thomas, you are someone who is enthusiastic about a lot of things, and that's a good thing. But if you spread thin, you're never going to be able to go deep and get like to be a master of one thing. And when I realized that, that was one of the things I knew. Like I really need to focus here on becoming a scholar, right? And I bloomed late, man. I was like scatterbrained. I go to this party and that party, and oh, let's go try out this like new sport, and I was just like I was all over the place, and I really needed to focus. And some of that was age and maturity. I just needed to be able to do that. But a lot of it, honestly, was just other people who knew me well and say, Thomas, it's time for you to like focus, and then you will go the distance. You can still be interested in those things, but like dedicate some time and stick with it. So having people who knew me well enough to do that, and then care enough to kind of point out a path, that's when I've really grown. And I had to go beyond myself, right? Like they were pointing ahead of where I was. Like my character was only so far, but they saw something for me beyond that. That was when my character was deepened. Yeah, I mean, some of those things I can tell you about. Some of those things are too personal, right? But like they pushed me, and that's where I grew. Was when I was pushed by people I trusted. People that I didn't trust. Yeah, it doesn't matter where they push me. Yeah, y'all feel that?
Yeah. No, I feel it, and I agree with that, because having a community like that to hold you accountable, not only when through good things, but through not so good things as well. So to have a community like that, and they don't do it in a sense to put you down, but they do it in a sense because they know that you can do better, and they want to see your potential. And that's kind of something that I saw in that message that you said, that I wanted to highlight. So it was really, 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 really interesting.
And building your career as you becoming a scholar, what is one myth that you have seen that has been mentioned in this thing, and that you think is not true?
Yeah. Well, that's a good question. What's a myth of being a scholar? Well, I could name a few, like that we have it all sorted out. We don't. Or that when you're a scholar, you're all in your head, but you're not like a real sociable, relatable person, right? Sometimes people have that. That's not true. Some people think as soon as you become a scholar, you stop worrying about practical things, right? You're just studying, but you're not about like serving and caring for people, right, or something like that. That I don't think that's true either. Most of the scholars I know are very dedicated to their communities, and they have very rich lives outside of scholarship. Those are some.
Yeah, and it's nice to see that you're saying these things out loud. You're saying the myth about the scholar, like being too much in their head, not looking around, looking at the communities and everything that's around it. Because I think it's good that you mentioned and you're able to kind of like let people see that there is actually a life behind a scholar. There is actually a family to take care. There is actually something behind it, and kind of like something that I can see in you is that you have a passion, and I think there is passion behind the school. There are like a lot of things that go behind it. And what's one question that if you were the host of this podcast, you were interviewing yourself, you would have asked yourself?
Oh man, I would probably be asking like one crazy question, or I don't know if you know about the podcast. It's called On Script, and it's on biblical studies and theology, and they have like a speed round where they ask like 10 questions real fast, like and there'll be crazy questions like, would you rather have flight or invisibility superpower, or what's one famous character you'd like to eat dinner with? Would you sing a song for me right now? Like crazy stuff like that. So that those are kind of the questions I might ask in like a podcast. But I would probably try to get something. I'd probably ask something about the scholar that has nothing to do with the expected, right? So I'd ask something about like what's something that doesn't have to do with your career, or something that people might be surprised about.
It's interesting. So now that we're on that topic, who are like two people that you would have dinner with that's not in your immediate like family or relationships, either dead or alive, either it's that people passed away or like like famous or not famous, or whoever.
Yeah. Well, of course, one of those would have to be a biblical character. I almost don't care which biblical character. I just love to like hear about their daily life. Like, what was it really like? Like, I've got all these imaginations about like Israelite villager, right? Just give me the average person, and just I'd love to just see how they ate, and how they prayed, how they walked, right? What they looked like, right? I'd love to just sit down and have a meal, and if they were one of the Exodus generation, oh man, just to talk to someone who saw like the plagues of Egypt, and going from like the biggest empire on the planet, and then going out in the desert. Like, what? I mean, going out in the desert to some mountain, like, and then seeing Mount Sinai. I mean, oh man, I'd love to. That's one. Probably love to have a meal with some very like powerful king, just so that I could see them eat with me. Like, it's like I don't know, Charlemagne. He's like early French king, right? And it's like, would he like my food? I'm kind of curious about that. I always talk to my wife, like, I bet Charlemagne would really like this food, right? Like, how good was his cook? Because my wife's a pretty good cook, and she doesn't just have like fruit from France. She has like food from all over the world. She can cook something pretty mean, and she's got like good equipment and stuff. Like,
The works.
he was probably just like having like, good stuff, like a leg of lamb or something like that, and like fresh vegetables. But like, she's baking and spices, and it's like, I think that would be kind of fun to just like sit down with somebody like that. Like, yeah, you're a king, but we all have to eat.
Yeah, that's that's an that's an interesting answer to see that, and going back in time and you're able to eat with them. And Tabitha Stories is coming to a conclusion, and it has been a pleasure to have you on the show. And two more questions that we have in the show. The first one is, where can our listeners find you?
They can find me on Simpson's website, and under my Tozer faculty profile. We're updating our website, so it'll get better as things go along. But you can also find me on Twitter. My handle is at Old Testament Tom, all one word, Old Testament Tom.
Yeah. And the last question, what does art means to you?
From an artist.
Yeah. Yes.
Remember Psalm 19, the heavens declare the glory of God? That's how that starts off. I see this God as an artist. And so part of my desire and to reflect his goodness and his like love and beauty is to also say that like I think we're all artists. So art to me is a mark of the maker. Right? He's the great artist. So any kid, you just throw crayons in front of them. What do? They make a world. Right? That's what I mean. God like he just thought like, here, I'm gonna speak a world into creation. Right? Like he's like a kid with crayons. Or actually it's a verse. Like the kid's like the maker. And so I see it as like a mark of God. And I think the church I came from, it was Life on the Vine back in Chicago, near and dear, deep in my heart. they supported and loved their artists in ways that my home church that I grew up in did not. And they just loved that, and they just let artists do crazy stuff, change the whole sanctuary. We had art out in the yard. There was just they would prophesy over it, like just cool stuff, right? And I just not only do I think that it's the mark of the maker, but I think it's something that the church can reclaim. And some of the older church traditions, Orthodox Church, the Catholic Church, like they have a lot of kind of artistic tradition that they're passing along. But it's time for us to continue that and to just support artists and, in our local congregation. You know, it's always like artists, like what are they gonna do? But it's totally worth it, right? And that's the kind of risk we need to take.
Yeah,
All right.
it's been a pleasure to have in the show and to hear your point of view in art and to share your story into the stories today.
Well, I'd love to say a blessing over you and Gustavo and Conrad as you go out in your summer and also on this podcast, because I think it's a wonderful venture. All right, this is what Aaron and all the priests were supposed to. They're supposed to put God's name on His people, and it goes Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, Ya'er Adonai panav elecha, Yichunecha, Yasa Adonai panav elecha, v'yasem l'cha shalom. Lord bless you and keep you guys. Amen.